Hi guys, I'm Calder from Calder and welcome to the very first Valentine's Day special. I will have 3 videos that will be Valentine themed, and in this video I will be showing you how to make a heart-shaped bowl and a heart-shaped cup. And if you'd like, you can of course make that cup into a mug, but in this video I will just keep it simple and show you how to get it heart shape. And I also show you how to throw them, and later on I will also be trimming them and glazing them. So without any further ado, let's head over to the wheel and start off with throwing a bowl. I start off with throwing a little bowl, so first I start to center the piece. I do this by coning it up and pushing it down. As you can see, I press my hands towards each other to cone it up, and then I just slowly press it down. And you can repeat this multiple times until the clay is fully centered. Then I press the clay downwards until I have it the white that I want, so the white that the clay is also the white that your bottom will have. And then I start opening it up. I press my middle finger into the clay and pull the clay outwards. And I go over the bottom a few more times to smooth it out and make sure it's flat. Then I make the bowl a little bit straighter and I start pulling up the walls. I hold a sponge in my right hand and I press towards my left hand on the inside while making an upwards movement. I start at the bottom and move all the way down to the top. And I repeat this multiple times to make the bowl higher and make the walls thinner. And as you can see, while I'm making the bowl, I'm also already pulling it outwards to get that bowl shape instead of a cylinder shape. And then when the bowl is finished, I like to go over it with a sponge to get rid of any water or slip that's still on the piece. And then I grab my wooden knife to get rid of any clay that's still left on the bottom, and I cut this off. Then I start making the heart shape. As you can see, I hold 2 fingers of my left hand on the outside and 1 finger of my other hand on the inside, and I pull the clay outwards. And I do the same thing on the other side, but then I pull it inwards to get this heart shape. Then I turn the heart towards myself and I start to define the shape a little bit more. I prefer to do this by going over it very carefully with a sponge. You might see that not a lot changes, but because I go over it so often and so carefully, it does change a little bit, and I can actually make the heart shape a little bit like sharper, and I try to make the shape as fluent as possible. And here I'm trying to make the point of the heart a little bit sharper, and I just try to smooth it out and make it one fluent shape. And as I said, I just use the tip of the sponge, so I'm not really putting a lot of pressure on it. And this is the heart bowl that you eventually have. Here I'm going to show you what it looks like when I do it with a bigger bowl. A bigger bowl is a bit more difficult to do because it is quite fragile and it has a bigger chance of collapsing. So as you can see here, it actually went wrong. Because the clay was so thin and so soft, it collapsed inwards, because the clay just couldn't handle the shape that I was trying to make. So I tried to save it with a sponge, but unfortunately it just started collapsing more. So what I would recommend to prevent this from happening is actually blow drying your piece before you make it into a heart shape. So what I do is just use a heat gun and I dry the inside and the outside, but don't dry it too long because you don't want it to become leather hard, because then you wouldn't be able to make it into a hard bowl anymore. So then I start to make it into a hard bowl again, and I again pull the clay outwards, and as you can see, I actually put my finger quite deep into the bowl and press quite a lot of clay outwards. And I do the same thing on the other side, so there I press the clay inwards to get this heart shape. And as you can see, I actually point the bottom of the heart towards my right hand, so I'm not pointing the heart towards myself. This makes it easier for me to make the shape and hold my hand straight, if you know what I mean. And then I turn it around towards myself so that I can see the shape better and try to make it symmetrical. And I again go over it very carefully with a sponge, and I try to make the shape a little bit more defined, and I try to make it into a fluent shape. As you can see, when I put a little bit more pressure on the bowl, I also like to hold my finger of my other hand on the outside or the inside, just which side I'm pressing on, to prevent it from collapsing. And because the bowl is a bit bigger, it might need a little bit more defining, so that's what I'm doing here. I just go over it very carefully and very slowly to just turn it into the shape that I like. And this is what the heart shape look like. And then I start throwing a cup. The cup kind of works the same, but I'll just show it briefly to you so that you know how to do this. I first again start off with centering clay, and then I open up the clay by pressing my middle finger into the middle and pulling the clay outwards. And then I start pulling up the walls. I do this by holding a sponge in my right hand and pushing towards my left hand, just like the bowl. But this time I try to keep it straight and keep it as a cylinder, try not to make it too wide. And when the cup becomes a little bit too wide, I like to hold both of my hands around it and press them a little bit inwards to keep that straight cylinder form. And then I just keep pulling it up. And as you can see, I also like to hold the thumb of my left hand on the outside on top of my right hand, because this way it's easy for me to move both of my hands at the same time. As you can see, the rim of my cup is a little bit wobbly, but the great thing about making it into a heart shape is that it doesn't really matter if your rim is perfectly straight, because you will change the form of the rim. And then I go over it with a sponge again to get rid of any water or slip that's still on the piece. And I grab my wooden knife to cut away some excess clay at the bottom and clean the bed. And then I make it into a heart shape again, and I do this the same way as with the balls. So I hold 2 fingers on the outside, 1 finger on the inside, and I pull the clay outwards. And on the top part I do the same, but then push it inwards. And as you can see here, I actually push my finger quite deep into the clay, so quite a lot of clay is pushed inward. This is a bit different from the ball, just because the cup is quite high, so I press quite a lot of clay inwards. And then I do the same with the ball, so I start to make the shape a little bit more fluent and try to get rid of any scratches and just make it into a fluent shape and make the points a little bit sharper. I do prefer to keep the points of the heart quite round, because otherwise it might be a little bit more difficult to drink from them. When I use these, I drink from the side, so I don't drink at like the point, because that's just not very comfortable for your lips. So if you would like to put a handle to this cup, I would recommend to put it on the top part of the heart, and then this is what the heart looks like. After the pieces have dried for a day, I start trimming them. The trimming is quite easy, so I'll keep this short. I first start off with making the bottom flat by just trimming a little bit away, and then I trim quite some clay at the side to make the ball into a round shape and to get rid of any excess clay, just so that the piece is a little bit lighter. And then I also like to make a little ring at the bottom. I do this by trimming away some clay at the bottom. And then I go over it with a sponge to smooth it out, and then I get rid of the slip that's on the piece by going over it with this trimming tool, and then I go over it with my fingers again to smooth it out even more. As you can see, I left some fingerprints on the heart ball while making it into the shape of a heart, so what I like to do with these is smooth them out with a wet sponge. It's not that difficult, I just go over all of the places that I touched while making it into a heart shape, and I just smooth it out with this sponge. And I also go an extra time over the rim, and then the pieces are finished and ready to dry before Bisque fire. I decided to glaze these pieces with the bubble glaze technique. I'm using a red underglaze from Emco. I'm not going to explain to you how to do this technique in this video, because otherwise this video would become way too long. So if you want to know how to do this technique, I would recommend to go over to the video that I made about this. I have a full instruction video and I will link it down below in the description. But here's just a little clip so you can see what I did and how it looks. After the bubbles have dried, I apply 2 coats of clear glaze on top of the bubbles, and I apply this all over the piece except for the bottom, and I let the glaze dry in between the coats. As you can see, I got some glaze on the bottom, and I like to clean this before putting it in the kiln by twisting it on top of this wet piece of fabric so that it won't get stuck to the kiln shelf. As you can see, I still had a little bit of glaze in the middle in my signature. I get it out by using the side of the fabric and then just pressing it on top of there. And here are some pictures of the final result. That was it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked it and learned something new from it. If so, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it yet. And if you're going to make these heart-shaped pieces yourself and you're going to post them on Instagram, please tag me at Calder so I can see your work, because I really enjoy that. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!